Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris Thomas. This is my final video in my Canadian series for safe locations for all the provinces of Canada. This particular video is all the eastern provinces combined into one video. I want to just start by mentioning a few things. I get complaints about my speech. Now my speech is fast here because I know what I want to say. But when it comes down to all the many dangers and conditions to do with various safe locations around the geology and the ocean waves and all that requires a lot of thought to put it, for me anyways, to put it into a stream of consciousness. So my speech does tend to slow down when I'm doing the detail work. But I do get complaints about the speed. So what you do is you go to the HD, the red and white letters with the gear over the gear icon. Click on it, and you go to speed, and you click. You'll see normal at first, and click on 1.25, and that will speed up my speech and make it easier for some people to listen. Now, the other thing I want to comment on is also in the same location. During my videos, I make references to flood maps and online maps and sometimes web locations that you can go to get more information. That's only if I mention them in my video. It's not a hodgepodge of different links. But you go to where it says show more underneath the video. Click on that and you'll see all the relative links that I mentioned, all listed there. So that's where you go to get that information. Now, speaking of information, I use zetatalk.com for my core approach to safe locations, and then I embellish and corroborate that information with Wikipedia articles, various government articles, or maps, geology, any type of physics I'll use to explain and to show what's going on, and it supports what ZetaTalk says. There are a few things that are taken on faith, and that is that the pole shift is 90 degrees, and that the pole melt will generate 675 foot rise in sea level globally, and there's a few other things that are pretty unique to ZetaTalk, and so those are I've had dreams and various things supporting that, but I can't put that in the video per se. But that's what I use for my support and analyzing areas for safe locations. Most of it's pretty common sense. Unfortunately, I get a lot of comments about Yellowstone and this and that people are reading government disinformation. Now, believe it or not, your government is lying to you. You must understand that. So you have to do your own research. That's what I do. But people have accepted information from government sources, and it's just untrue when you really look into it. So you have to do your own research if you want to challenge what I'm saying. Do your own reading, do your own video, read ZetaTalk. If you want to rely on the government or NASA or corporations, what have you, for your information, that's your call. But I just wanted to comment that that's what I use in my work. Now, another thing that's very important I want to mention is that many times they're very tough on an area being unsafe for settling. That comes from being very cautious and conservative about safe locations. But if I was to say that, for example, I don't consider southern Alberta to be particularly a good area to live. Partly because I've noticed there isn't very many lakes there. There isn't much fresh water, it seems. But there's always a way to find a way to survive. Obviously, there are caveats. I mean, you don't want to be in a river valley because it's going to flood. You don't want to be at the base of a mountain that's covered with soil because it's going to be landslides or rock slides on you. You don't want to be in a big city during. Now, remember, during the pole shift, the inland populations have a much higher percentage of survival than do the coasts. So there are many more survivor migrants and gangs and aggressive people, thieves and what have you, going to survive in the inner continental areas. So there are caveats to survival, but as I said, there are always ways to find a way to survive. If you're hidden, I think the most important thing is to be hidden and to be secret. It's no good if you're on a road. If you're trying to survive on a road near a big city, it's not going to work, because that's the first place that the survivor migrants are going to do. They're going to walk down that road, they're going to see a house, and it's just bad. It's a bad situation. Also, my videos are predicated on the existence of Planet X and the imminent and impending pole shift. Now, if you're new to Planet X and you're new to the pole shift, you really need to watch a different video. This is for people who already have had the dreams, they already know what's going on, and they want to get some specific information on their particular areas they're living in. Also, well, you can see here, I've got my email right there. Copy that, pause the video and copy that down. If you have any questions, you can email me. I'll try to answer as many emails as I can. I am getting busier. I do love to talk to people about the pole shift. I don't talk about anything else. I don't respond to emails about political things or tertiary issues, or even secondary issues. I'm only focused on safe locations for the pole shift and questions around that. So just keep that in mind when you're contacting me. Also, I prefer voice contact, so if it's possible, you can call me. I am open to that as well. So those are some of the things I want to mention. You can also see my Facebook group here. Is right here. I'll have that on my channel as well. So that is my little introduction. So we're going to head into looking at the province of Quebec. Okay, let's take a look at the province of Quebec. We've got 8.3 million as of 2014 in southern Quebec. Now, this is a danger area just by virtue of the amount of population there. There are some issues with the terrain in southern Ontario that will affect, well, may or may not affect Quebec, but these lakes, this is going to stretch and break through here. All this between Georgian Bay and Kingston, Ontario is going to stretch, and the ground is going to open up, and I don't know if there'll be a new seaway, but it's going to be a lot of action through here. Now, my intuition tells me that this won't slow the population, the migrating population coming up this land bridge here from Michigan, through Michigan, possibly through Niagara Falls too as well. So there's going to be a lot of flow, people that don't have a boat going up this way into Quebec. So, but it's recommended not to be in a heavy populated area because it's just too dangerous. You've got now bear in mind that people in the inland areas of the province have a high ratio of surviving the pole shift because there aren't any pole waves to kill them. So now, with the exception of those who might be along the very edge of the coast of St. Lawrence, which by the way does better than you think, which I'll get to that later in this, it's part of the video. But by virtue, as I said, of the high population, you want to move out of that area. Now there is another issue, and that's to do with some earthquake zones and fault lines through here, which I'll get to shortly. There will be no law in the aftertime. There may be some well-meaning police or RCMP or Canadian military, but I'm recommending, unless you're a very intuitive person, I'm recommending to stay away from the police or the RCMP or the military, because they're just going to want to control you. So unless, I don't know, they may entice you with food, but I wouldn't trust them. Because there'll be no government support. So who are they going to be serving? Themselves. That's my opinion. There will be some good people, some good police, but by and large, you can't rely on a law and order in the aftertime. Okay, so we've got that going on, and you can see most of Quebec is not populated. It's very is hinterland. It's just beautiful land. Now on this map, you want to click on this. This will open a larger map that you can zoom in on. So if you're in Labrador and you want to see where all the towns in Labrador are gone anyways, if the pole melt. But if you want to zoom in, you can zoom in on this to get a good look at the terrain. Now this is based. Now these land mass losses are the dark blue, according to the pole melt, which will occur about 2025. Pole shift, I believe, will be in 2023. Are different for Quebec and Labrador, and New Brunswick and the Gaspe Peninsula, and Nova Scotia, and Newfoundland, the island of Newfoundland. They all have different, which I'll show in a minute. So you click on the map, it'll give you a bigger one. So we've got a very old craton, almost 4 billion years old. So Quebec does very well geologically for the pole shift. Now we've got some detail here on what each section is going to look like as far as landmass loss, which the next frame will cover. Now I want to point out that Zetatalk has given us a ratio of 100 miles inland and 200 feet above sea level against the pole shift waves. Just a quick word that this, as I said, this dark blue is to do with pole melt. I start with this because there's no sense in locating your, if you're living in these towns here in the dark blue, there's no sense staying there, because you're going to lose your land to the pole melt anyways. That's why I start there. But in reality, the pole wash is a much more aggressive. Now I've got this set at 900, just back off to about 800, because we know the waves will be up to 700 feet high. Now this is with exception with the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the St. Lawrence Seaway, which I'll cover in a minute, is a difference there. But generally, it's very when you look at what's going to happen is that when the Earth stops rotating, not a stoppage of rotation, but during the pole shift itself, when the core separates from the mantle internally, it moves first, and then the mantle, the crust or the outer mantle of the Earth that we know as Earth, is going to move after that, during that hour. At the end of that hour, the crust comes to a stop at its final location, where this new orientation at 90 degrees, we're told by Zeta Talk. And what will happen is that then the oceans will move and be displaced on land. It's not just a wave, it's a ocean displacement on land. So that implies a great deal, an unimaginable amount of water flowing on land. Now, having said that, if you're situated here, for example, in this area here, in Labrador, say one of these towns, this is very dangerous against funneling because of this inlet here. Water will become crashing in, and the sides of this inlet will force the seawater to funnel and push farther inland here. So the mass will be compressed from here, and don't forget, it's not just one, it's being pushed from the ocean. That's the ocean mass is behind it, is pushing it, and it's going to be forced into a narrow area, and it's going to push way in like that. So it's very dangerous here because of funneling. Now here is much safer to be right here. It's closer to the Atlantic, but it's much safer because, well, it happens to be a little higher. But even if it wasn't, say you were here, it's still safer than to be here. It's safer to be here than here. This is because of the funneling here. Even here we'll have some funneling here. So it's actually safer there than it is here. So you get the principle. That's the funneling I wanted to mention. And so we have a ratio that's 100 miles inland and 200 feet above sea level. So that can be 50 miles inland and 400 feet above sea level, or 25 miles inland and 800 feet above sea level. So you get so that can be adjusted. So you just need to find out your level of your location and making sure you're within those guidelines. Now, here I've isolated each section of Quebec and Labrador, which is on the craton. That stays, that's solid. It's not going to go anywhere. It vibrates. You're going to have stuff going on, but it's not going to move. The ground's not going to open up. You're going to have landslides. You're going to have flooding, but the ground's not going to move. With the exception possibly of southern Quebec. There are some areas, I believe I'll get into that shortly. Now we've got that. This area is one area as far as loss of landmass during the pole melt. The Gaspe Peninsula and New Brunswick is one area, as isolated from Nova Scotia. So this area is another area. That gets a bounce up. It loses 225 feet of sea level, but it's actually a gain. This loses 675. This loses. Actually, that's an error. It actually loses 450, but it gains. It doesn't lose as much. That shouldn't be 225. It should be 450. So now, in the case of Nova Scotia, it's different again. I don't mention it here, but it's actually a loss of it's about the same. It's about 550 for Nova Scotia. It's a loss of land but I cover Nova Scotia separately later on. And of course, Newfoundland is a case unto its own, which I'll cover later. And the mass is okay. Now, just briefly, we will mention that the reason for the difference in the land mass loss due to pole melt is because you can see that the rock here is a completely different age and different type of rock than it is from the craton. This is the Canadian Shield craton here. So this rock is very different. That splits off through here, right through there. So Newfoundland pushes away, gets pulled away, right through there, down the St. Lawrence, and underneath the lakes, and then down into Mississippi Valley, something like that. So that would be the New Madrid fault line adjustment. Well, that per se, what we call the New Madrid, is actually prior to the pole shift. But during the pole shift, this separates permanently down in here. It opens up this the Gulf of St. Lawrence. But you can see with this different color rock, that's why you get differing sea levels, because you get it. What Zeta says is a bounce up for this area, so it actually lifts. That's the reason for the difference in the loss of land mass. And if you click on these maps, it'll open up a larger map in your browser, and you can zoom in on these maps to get a better look at your situation. Now, this is the standard globe showing the different cells of prevailing wind that causes the prevailing wind. So we know, you can see the blue arrows. So in actuality, the wind will not change direction per se. It's the land mass that'll be laid. As you see, I've overlaid North America approximately where it will be for the aftertime. This is after the pole shift. So it lays on its side. Well, actually, the globe lays on its side. The globe rotates 90 degrees. So even though it's really a moot point, but the wind will not change direction, but the land mass reorients. So the experience will be is that the wind will be coming from a different direction. But here you can see the different direction, the wind, where the wind will be coming from. The prevailing winds, the norm, just the default wind direction will be coming from with these blue arrows. So it'll be coming this direction. So you can examine that. Now the eastern provinces don't change to a different cell. I'm on Vancouver Island. I moved from this cell called the Hadley cell to the northeast trades in this area here. So I get a much different weather. I'm really envious of the weather for eastern Canada. You'll see why in a minute. Well, I can cover it now. So even though we do lose, you do drop in latitude, but there's a much bigger influence that causes a warmer climate for the eastern provinces, and that will be that I can demonstrate that here. Here you can see the Greenland ice sheet. The Greenland ice sheet is 1,500 kilometers long by 1,000 kilometers wide. This is just approximate, and anywhere from 2 to 3 kilometers thick. There are other ice sheets in surrounding islands as well. Now these are all going to melt. Now that's because the globe lays on its side, and the new equator is going to pass through. You can see it here. Now, this is the international date line, but the equator will also pass through. It'll arc through here like this. See, between Alaska and Russia. So the Arctic Ocean will become a tropical ocean, and that warm water will filter through the islands, and of course this ice sheet will melt from 2023 to 2025. And eventually all that warm water will be flowing past the shores of Labrador, Quebec, Newfoundland, and and Nova Scotia, bringing more mild winters, and still, I think it'll still be cool to warm temperate. So you have a lovely combination of maybe a little bit of snow in the winter, but in the higher land, but you'll have a much nicer winter. So that's a real big plus for the East Coasters. So we've got, okay, and I believe that within about 10 years that the weather will settle down and be more predictable. I know anyone that's 15 or 20 years old today, maybe even 30 years old, may not have ever experienced regular weather. I remember times when judging on the almost to the mid-month what the weather was going to be like. We knew what the weather was going to do, what kind of winds you're going to have. That's coming back once the earth settles down, because we now know that the crazy weather is due to the earth wobble, which is due to the nearby presence of planets. And that's another, I have other videos explaining all the details on that. So maybe I'll provide a link to that in this video at some point. Now, as I said, we do have fault zones in southern Quebec, so these are not recommended necessarily, especially down in the extreme southern areas, anyways, because you're close to the high population areas. Speaking of okay, I'll get into that in a bit. Okay, so you've got these an area here. It's right detailed. The areas. This is the name of it. I'm not going to pronounce it because I'm not a francophone. And so you may get some ground movement in here. As you can see, central to northern Quebec is very stable. There is some fault lines along the St. Lawrence. Again, it's not recommended to be right on the coast. Now, because of there will be ocean action, regardless of the fact that we know that the St. Lawrence does split open, giving lots of space for the pole shift waves to bounce, move about. So it does give the St. Lawrence communities a relief from the ocean waves, but it's still not recommended to be there due to population and migration issues, and because there is fault line activity through here. So it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. So you're just better to move to safe high ground where you're hidden, and if you want to move back later, then maybe you'll do that. But this area is definitely southern Quebec, and definitely has its fault lines in here. So you may want to download this slideshow. Will be in the form of a PDF, and you can download it and you can examine that more closely. Pole shift conditions, they're not going to be 100% for everyone everywhere in the world, because this depends on the kind of soil you're on, how you're exposed to the winds, what type of rock is underneath your location. But Quebec does very well because it's on the Craton, the Canadian Shield. So we've got Category 6 hurricanes, tornadoes. You've got massive rain, massive rain. We've got flying rock fragments, meteor fragments. We've got forest fire you have to be careful about. So there's a lot to think about, but it's doable. It's doable. Use your intuition, use your waking dreams. I've talked about waking dreams before. Waking dreams will show and point you the way. You can contact me and I can write something up at some point explaining waking dreams if people are not aware of it. But they'll be flying in the last, they're flying now, telling people what to do. Dreams, regular conventional night dreams are telling people. Many people are clairvoyant as well, and they've had dreams all their lives. But for those new to it, waking dreams are really excellent because you're awake during the dream. And so if you want information on it, contact me, and I'll leave a method of you contacting me on that. The pole shift will be announced by the falling of fine red dust from the tail of Planet X. That'll fall first. So that's your cue to get in your safe location, to get into your bunker, or you've got a trench, or you've got some type of arrangement against the flying rock and the high winds. So the red dust falls first, then you get progressively heavier sand. Starts with fine sand, it gets heavier and heavier, and then it gets into small pebbles, and then it slowly works its way up to boulders. Now, I don't know how fast it gets that way, but I know this happens within a day and a half or 2 days of the pole shift. So you look for your red dust, and you get ready to get out of the wind in your area that you've prepared for. And remember, it's only 1 hour long. Now again, we have to prepare yourself against landslides. So don't situate your camp, or if your home is on deep soil, on mud flats somewhere, or some muddy area near a river, don't be there. Sell your house now, get out of there. You want to be on rock. Now, all dams are going to break. All reservoirs are going to break during the pole shift. So you do not want to be downstream or close to a stream or a river that has a dam upstream or a reservoir upstream. So, and the other thing is that you want to be aware of, if you're near a river and you're at a lower elevation than the river, or you're in a valley near the river, then you want to research the Zeta Talk has given this. Research the historic level, the highest historic level that river has reached as far as flooding is concerned, and multiply it by 3, and you need to be above that 3 times that amount. That you need to be higher from the stream or lake above that amount. Yeah, so it's all survivable. It's just a question of preparation and education, and that's what we're doing here. Aftertime issues for Quebec. Well, the good news is that there's a new channel opening up in the Lake Champlain, Albany, Hudson River area. That'll be history, and it's all becoming a sea channel. So there'll be a flow through here. So there'll be all new conditions in the Gulf. Lots of action, probably lots of great fishing, fabulous food. So that's why we recommend, Zeta Talk recommends being close to the sea in the aftertime. That's one thing about the eastern provinces. You can have so much food, you're going to be trading it. It's going to be, the food's going to be fantastic, the seafood. And that's because of the CO2 from the volcanoes is absorbed and gets into the oceans, and the sea life is just going to explode. Okay, so we got, but the big issue with Quebec will be dealing with survivor migrants. And as I said before, they're going to be coming up this land bridge here from Indiana and Ohio. Now, when you look at the population of the U.S., it's extremely dense in this area, and they are all, you look at this map here, I'm going to go back to, we're going to go back to about 675, and you can see that the seaboard is losing, very highly populated areas are being flooded. So all these people are going to move somewhere, and there's enough people up in here as well. So they're all going to be seeking better land, and Canada is well known for that, to be not as highly populated, anywhere near as highly populated as in the States. So these people are all going to be coming up these land bridges here. I'll just take this out so you can see that. So these land bridges, what's left with where they can get through, they're coming through here or through here, or they're going to be crossing the new St. Lawrence Gulf to get into Quebec. So that's a problem that Quebecers are going to have to deal with. So either you move far into the highlands, the central Quebec, to get away from them, or as Zeta Talk suggests, community rules and a strong community to resist the demands and the conditions that are going to be created by a flow of migrants into their area. So that's something that Quebecers will have to deal with. Now, so, and the final issue here is bears. Now, I know anyone living in northern Quebec or northern Ontario already knows how to deal with bears, but people that are living, in these areas in Canada where Quebec and the southern areas where they're more urbanites, and they're not used to that. So I'm telling you that bears will be an issue. So food control will be very important. Fire control will be very important. Any waste has to be very, very carefully sealed or buried, because don't forget, well, as it says here, bears can smell food 20 miles away downwind. So you're going to have to learn how to cook with low heat and how to control your food and how to prepare it so it's not, and to deal with composting, that kind of thing, so it's not producing a lot of smell. So that's going to be an issue. I don't like to say this, but apparently it's going to be necessary to have rifles to protect you and your family against bears. So it's just a reality that people are going to have to deal with who are living in the bush or away from populated areas. It's a whole new lifestyle. Just wanted to touch on that. So that's Quebec, and next we're going to be covering Newfoundland and Labrador. Okay, let's take a look at Newfoundland and Labrador. Well, Labrador is on the Craton. So as it loses 675 feet of land mass of sea level, and that affects the land mass. And unfortunately, let's go back to my previous one of my previous maps here. Again, use this map here, or the one previous to the previous frame, to click on it so you can zoom into these into Labrador. Here you can see that pretty much, with the exception of Labrador City and I believe it's Fremont, pretty much all the towns in Labrador will be lost to the pole melt. And so I'm unclear. Yeah, this is Quebec. So that's what this map is for, so you can zoom in and at least get an idea of where you could move away from the to get away from the advancing seas beforehand. That way you're not doing it on the fly. That's the whole point. So most of Labrador's population will have to move. So it is good rock, so there's nothing to worry about there. It's just the flooding of the rivers from all the massive rain, and then the pole shift waves, get away from them. And if you're going to figure on about, let's do a quick thing on that for Labrador. We know it's going to be, we're going to call it 800 feet. So if you want to look at this, I will leave a map open for you to zoom in on rather not a map, but a flood map web like this one here, and you can put in your 800 feet, and you can zoom in to your community and see right down very close, so you can see how far is likely to wash. Obviously, there are many areas in Labrador to go to, and it's great rock, so that's good. But the deal will be for Labradorians to move beforehand, because there's no saving those towns along the Atlantic there. Now, getting back to my right. Now, that's the Quebec. Let's go to the conditions for. Okay, so the good news for Labrador is, as it is for Quebec, is that the Iceland the Greenland's ice sheet is going to melt. So that's going to bring warm water circulating down from the Arctic Ocean, which will become a tropical ocean. So much warmer water is going to be on the shores of Labrador, creating a much different climate. So it's going to be, instead of having those miserable winters, you're going to have, you're going to have much more milder winters, and still retain a nice bit of coolness during the winter, but your summers are going to be warmer. So it's going to be better all around for Labradorians. Now, Newfoundland is a different case here. I've covered it here. Now, Newfoundland, as far as Zeta Talk is concerned, we know it's going to bounce up with the rest of, as I said before, with this map here, the different rock is the same rock that's on underneath Newfoundland. So it gets a bounce up, but the Zeta Talk information on and I'll leave that for on a link for you to read for yourself, is a little ambiguous as to what the final sea level will look like. Regardless, now the good news is it doesn't really matter, because you have to move away from the coast against the ocean wash. This video indicates, rather this image indicates how far you have to be away from the coast. Now this, as I said in previous parts of the video, that this particular image I have it online in a much bigger format, so you can zoom in on Newfoundland, and it has great detail there, and you can zoom in and see your community. But this is the ocean wash. I think this is set, oh yes, this is set at 700 feet. So this particular image is set at 700 feet ocean wash. So if you want to be more conservative than that, then you could set your set your flood map, which I'll have this link for you, at 800 feet for Newfoundland if you want, or 900 feet. The theme, though, is that you want to be, as I said in my previous part of the video, this is very unsafe here. This area is very unsafe along here, because this seawater blowing in from the Atlantic here is going to funnel and push way up into here. So you're actually safer here. No, there's more funneling taking place here. So you're safer here, closer to the sea, than you are in this area here. You're safer here in this area than you are here. Or you're safer here than you are right there. So you get the idea. If you're at the point of an inlet, that's where the unsafe area is. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're relocating. So you can set your own level, but I've got it set at 700 feet here. Now, the conditions of the sea, since it's an island, it's important to cover this. I think this is a bit complex to explain. Anyways, I have the detail. You can download this and read it, but I want to explain it. We've got to cover survivor migrants. Okay, so we've got several conditions affecting the seashore, leading up to just before the pole shift, during the pole shift, and after the pole shift. It spans about 2 years. And let's start with the month or week before, a few weeks before the pole shift. What's going to happen is that this is the mid-Atlantic ridge, and the Atlantic is being stretched on either side. This is going to eventually open up by, I think, about 100 or 50 miles here, or more. I don't know how much for sure, but it's going to open up quite wide. Before it opens up, which will happen during the pole shift itself, before it opens up, the land underneath and around Newfoundland, it's the same with Labrador, by the way, and Nova Scotia and parts of Quebec there. The land is going to be sinking. What that means, and that's happening because this is under a strain to stretch. So the land is being pulled apart and is therefore will drop down. And it's estimated that approximately 50 feet, so the sea will rise about 50 feet during the weeks prior to the pole shift. And that's due to the stretching of the Atlantic seafloor. Now, at this time, in that month, or that 3 weeks before the pole shift, the Earth is already starting to slow its rotation. The reason it's slowing its rotation is because the mid-Atlantic ridge is actually a mountain range of 10,000 miles long, and it's an iron-rich mountain range, and it has its own magnetic signature. Now, I cover this in some other videos, quite a bit of detail. But what happens is that the reason for rotation stoppage, which is in the annals of history if you know where to look, is because the mid-Atlantic ridge it causes a lock-on to Planet X as it gets close. Now, don't forget, during this scenario, Planet X is moving closer by the hour. As it gets close enough, the Earth actually stops rotation because of this mountain range, and it slowly comes to a stop. And finally, it comes to a stop. So obviously, that means since the Planet X is sunward, it means this will happen during the day, during the morning for the East Coasters. Now, that's the reason for the stoppage. Now, when the Earth stops rotating, all the water that is built up around the equator, now I don't know how many quadrillion gallons that equates to, but it's like, I can't say it, but it's a great deal of seawater, and it's there because of centrifugal force, because the equator is the fastest moving part of the rotation of the Earth. which is a little over 1,000 miles an hour. That comes to stop. So what happens then is the water begins to redistribute during rotation stoppage. So that is in the week before the pole shift, approximately 6.5 days before the pole shift. This is Zeta Talk information. During that rotation stoppage, the water distributes. So that means you're going to have differing, you're going to have, obviously still going to have the 50 feet drop of the landmass of the island. Plus you're going to have moving water going to the poles, both poles, redistributing during rotation. So you got that action going on. So that's going to contribute to confusion as to where the coast is going to be. So again, being away from the coast is very critical. Now, during the pole shift, the crust is separated from the core, and the core moves to its new orientation, and then the mantle of the Earth follows after the crust, the outside of Earth, like that. So it moves, and when it comes to a stop, you have the oceans are going to be displaced onto the land, and that's why you have the ocean waves. It's not just a wave, it's the displacement of the ocean onto the land. So so then now you've got the ocean wash, which is predicted to be, well, the height of 600 feet, of 500 to 600 feet. Now, so that means now you've got the danger of the water moving inland. So that's why you need to be obviously in these high areas against the ocean wash to protect yourself, right? So now the ocean drains back from the highlands, and then you're left with, briefly, you're left with what you're familiar with before. Only obviously the areas near the ocean will be washed clean. Probably forests will be knocked down. Any houses or anything that was, any people there are drowned. You're going to have an awful mess. But that's what will. So, but what happens is that the seashore returns to what you see here roughly. So then that's just after the pole shift. Now, because during the pole shift, the ice caps are moving to the equator. The poles, the existing geography of the poles moves to the equator. Now all the ice caps melt. So now that takes, according to Zeta Talk, that takes a 1.5 years to melt. So by 2025, you're back to a loss of landmass. Now for Newfoundland and for other areas of the world, you have gained. Now this is not actually, this is, so Newfoundland will bounce up during the pole shift, so you're going to have more landmass around your island. So, but that's only temporary, because as the pole melt occurs, you lose that again, and you're back to what I think will be, well, again, it's a bit ambiguous, but I think in the end, Newfoundland will have gained some land, and you're just going to have to find it how much, because it's very difficult to figure out exactly how much is going to happen for Newfoundland. But the good news is that you're going to be on highlands and survive, and then you'll just have to wait until about 2025, 1.5 years or so after the pole shift, and to find where the shores are finally going to settle to. So that is my explanation of what's going on. I take that from Zeta Talk. So yeah, so again, you're going to have fabulous food for the aftertime, because the ocean is just going to be burgeoning with seafood. So food's not going to be a problem. So all you got to do is survive the pole shift in these highlands, and you're good. So we've got that. Yeah. So that's Newfoundland and Labrador. Next, we're going to cover New Brunswick. Okay, let's take a look at New Brunswick. New Brunswick has 2 or 3 issues that need to be looked at. The first one is that New Brunswick, and you'll see in the next map, in the next frame, loses about half its landmass to the pole melt. So that forces probably looks like about 40% or 35% of the population into other parts of New Brunswick, or perhaps Maine or Quebec, but it does look like quite a compressed area. Now there is the highlands here, that area that is not populated hardly at all, so that can absorb quite a few people. Now let's take a look at the ocean wash at 750 feet. Let's call it 800 to be more conservative. This is pole shift ocean waves. So we've got now this map will be on my channel, so you can put in your own numbers here. 800 feet. So you've got loss of some land here and up through here. So it actually looks like more like about 50 to 60%. Maybe even 75% of the population will be forced to move into this high area here. We have areas here which are nice here. So you see it's a bit complicated, but you do have areas to go to. So it looks to me like a great deal of the population will be pushed out of these populated areas into the unpopulated areas. So if we go back to my other, yeah, because this is all here is all, yeah, so it looks like this area here will be pretty popular. Now when you zoom into those areas, it actually looks like pretty good land. You've got some treed areas in here where the loggers haven't got to, and you've got one good thing too I've noticed too is you've got some great road system into this area. Terrific, really. I wish I had that in British Columbia, but on Vancouver Island. But yeah, so you've got good opportunity there to move up in here and set up camp. So you can do that. So it looks good from that department. Also, I have this map here. It shows that it's got a pretty nice river system in there too. So that'll give water and possible travel opportunities for people who live in this area. And of course, it allows for growing crops as well. So that's one issue, and it's going to be plugged into this area here pretty tightly, but the area does look quite good and with good roads into it. Now, before I cover the next issue, I will comment on PEI. PEI, I would have done a special section on it if it was survivable, but it's not. So if you are a PEI resident, or you know some people, or you have family there, there's no sense in staying in PEI because it's completely overwashed during the pole shift. It's too low. I think the highest point is something like 47 feet. Correct me if I'm wrong. 47 to 60 feet above sea level. So it's going to be just washed right over, and it'll be buried in the pole melt anyways, which you'll see in the next frame. It's completely covered over, and during the pole melt. Now you can click on this map, and your browser will open a bigger version of what you see in my presentation. So you can zoom in on this map, and I made it nice and large so you can zoom right in if you want to see where you are situated. You can also use the sea level map itself, which you can zoom right down on it as well. So now I want to cover what I'm thinking of it, the importance of safe locations. Now when you look at these areas, I'm actually going to close this and I'm going to go back to the flood map. Now, seawater, when it's flowing fast in the case of an ocean wave, in the case of the actual pole shift, the oceans are actually being displaced onto the land. So it's not just a wave; it's a massive, unimaginable amount of water. It's just not imaginable. So the pushing up into these valleys. So if you look at this, for example, here, now this is set at 800 feet, but this valley is going to be overwashed because you're going to have this water thrusting up this river valley, and it's going to fill right up into here. May even just flow through over here. Maybe just be flowing back and forth like that. So you're going to have, so this is unsafe here because of the funneling. Here is unsafe being here because the water will fill up and keep pushing and push into these valleys here. So this is very unsafe in here. You're safer here than you are over here, but that's not a good example. Here's a good example. You're safer here than you are here in this area, even though this is higher, and you can't just situate yourself anywhere. You'd be near the roads, but certainly in this area, this valley is very unsafe. Where you're safer here because you don't have the seawater funneling up onto this plateau. It may around the edges, but you get the principle. So so we have so New Brunswick has that issue with population being compressed in this area, and you have and now the other big problem with New Brunswick is really to do with migration. So when you look at the population of New England states, eastern seaboard of the United States, all these people along this coast here, millions and millions and millions of people, and with money, are going to be looking for a new place to live. So they're going to push up into Canada through Michigan and up over through this way here up into Canada, and that's also they're also going to push up towards the Gaspe Peninsula through Maine, and so that's going to put a lot of migrants moving into your area, into your province. So if you want to stay in New Brunswick, and it's not too bad in this area, then you have to be hidden and you have to be secret. So you find your location in there and you don't tell anybody, and you get yourself set up and you have your community in there. I know a lot of people want to stay in the house. There's probably some towns in there up in there. Perhaps there's some towns. I see there's a few little oddball little places up in there that might be livable. But by and large, people are going to have to move from the homes to get away from the pole shift waves. But if you have a house up, if you had a house up in here, well, that's great. But unfortunately, it means moving and setting up living quarters, and it's a unimaginable change in your lifestyle. It's just unbelievable. The whole topic is so hard to swallow. But if you're getting the dreams and you're getting the waking dreams, you're getting the and your interest has been piqued and you're studying the news very carefully, then you'll know that what's going on, especially if you're reading Zeta Talk. So it's going to happen. So you've got places to move to in New Brunswick. And also the same thing is going to happen to New Brunswick coast is happening to the island of Newfoundland. Is that the coast, before the pole shift, the coasts drop, and during the rotation stoppers there's all kinds of tidal action, weird tidal action going through. It's completely unsafe. So by the time all that's happening, you're going to be located away from the coast anyway. So this doesn't mean you won't see this. But if you're near the coast and you know anybody, should warn them, because there's no way you can be sure what's going to happen. And then of course the pole melt comes and then it floods the landmass permanently. So that is New Brunswick. Next we're going to cover Nova Scotia. Okay, we're going to look at Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia gets some bounce up during the pole shift itself. You can see again, the reason for that is this is different rock than the craton of Quebec and Labrador. So Zeta Talk tells us that the Gaspe Peninsula gets a bounce up of about 250 feet, where Nova Scotia gets 150 feet. As to what why the difference is, I'm not sure. All I can guess is it could have something to do with the fact that the Atlantic floor, seafloor, is stretching, and because of the distance of Nova Scotia from the Gaspe Peninsula is closer to the Atlantic, and I think that's the reason why it doesn't get the full bounce up that the Gaspe Peninsula gets. So that's okay. So it's the fault line extending from the New Madrid, from my estimation. When you look at these seafloor here, you'll see a seam right there, and we know that the St. Lawrence is going to split open, and we know that the New Madrid goes proper, that we know of, goes through, well, Illinois, Missouri area in here. Please don't quote me on that. I'm just guessing here, but I know it's in this general area, and it goes down the Mississippi Valley, and there's some other fault lines that go that way, and some going to Texas. But my estimation is that this is where it starts here. So it's gonna pull Newfoundland away from Labrador, and it opens up the Gulf of St. Lawrence. So this whole area splits out, and then what it does is it achieves a lighter. It's able to express its lighter rock, so it in the magma, so it actually lifts upwards, whereas the craton of the Canadian Shield is not going to move. So this moves. So we've got Nova Scotia bouncing up and 150 feet. So for Nova Scotians, before the pole shift, the I would say about 2 or 3 weeks to a month before the pole shift, the coast drops 50 feet. Then during rotation stoppage, when the sun is still in the sky for about 6 days, the oceans redistribute during that period of time, so you have even more crazy tidal action going through here. And then after that, you have the pole shift. Then you have the pole shift waves that will wash over quite a bit of Nova Scotia. That's a big problem with Nova Scotia. If you look at, if you consider an ocean wash of even, we're talking about 700 feet. So there's not much land left for Nova Scotia if you want to be conservative in protecting yourself against the ocean waves. The only really safe location that I could see would be this area here in certain areas here. Again, you're going to stay away from the ends of inlets because the surging water funneling will push up into the valley there. So these areas here they follow the cursor. These are the safe areas there, and of course in eastern Nova Scotia, northeastern Nova Scotia, you have this area which is safe. So that's the problem for Nova Scotia, is that pretty much all of Nova Scotians will have to move to these areas if they want to stay on that land. Now the good news is that in the aftertime you will regain your land mass, so you'll be able to migrate down somewhat. You'll have more land mass, but it's really going to end up as being a series of islands in the aftertime after the pole melt is finished. But the good news is there'll be lots of food. That's really good news for the East Coast. So as I mentioned, PEI is going to be overwashed, so it's just not a viable place to be at all, not in the least. So this is what the island will look like after the pole shift at 2023, but I believe it's going to be 2023, and when the pole melt is finished by 2025, it will be a series of islands. So so if you want to look at that closer, just click on this map here in New Brunswick, and that'll open up the appropriate for the pole melt 2025. This is the two different maps combined. This is for New Brunswick, but it's also, I've included, this is for Nova Scotians. It's a slightly different elevation, so it's combined. So at any rate, this is the one you'll use, and you can zoom in on this with pretty good detail, and you can pretty much tell, well, most of the people in town are going to have to move. Well, look, there's 5 islands, so maybe they won't have to move. So you can zoom in on that. So that's the bad news for Nova Scotia, is that everyone has to move except for maybe one town. And so you're going to have to move by 2020, or rather by 2022, before 2022, and have your safe camp set up, and set up your new life, and then find the coast afterwards in 2025. So that's Nova Scotia, and I think that pretty much wraps it up. There are there are things that you have to be consider, like you have to consider fresh water sources. You have to be, you have to have the best water filtration you can buy, or just distillation, or you're harvesting fog in some way for fresh water. There are technologies out now that you can do that. It's a passive technology, and it's a unit, a large unit that sits in. You can gather drinking water, perfectly clear, perfectly good distilled drinking water, which I drink quite a bit of, and it's nothing like drinking distilled water. It's excellent stuff. So water, and of course, and you're trying to avoid the global deposits of volcanic ash in the stratosphere, which will put lead from the volcanic ash in the rain. And also, I believe it's suggested that you, well, anyways, that's another video, but I just wanted to cover the safe locations for Nova Scotia. Yes, and just in case I haven't explained this for Nova Scotians, you want to avoid the funneling at the tips of these valleys, because the water won't stop there. It'll push up a bit. It's safer here than it is here. It's safer here than it is here. So just wanted to finish up with that. So that's Nova Scotia. And the last little bit I should mention is migrants. The migrants will arrive, so it's going to have to be something that everyone has to deal with. The demands or what have you of the migrants. So hopefully they won't be too demanding, but they will be coming. So you have to prepare yourself against some way of dealing with aggressive migrants making demands. So that's Nova Scotia. Okay, this concludes my Canadian series of safe locations for all the provinces of Canada. I think it's pretty clear by all my videos that Canada does very, very well for the pole shift. In fact, I think it's probably, as far as I know, it's as far as a country is concerned, it's about the best country that I've seen, that I studied for safe locations. I think it's probably because it's the Canadian Shield, but even British Columbia has its advantages, and Alberta, and even though they're not on the Canadian Shield, it's still old rock, but it's not under the stress that the U.S. is under. So it does very well, and of course there will be migrants moving up from the U.S., and which is fine, because we all have to deal with migrants in our various ways. And of course the best way, as I keep saying, is to be hidden and to be secret. So I'm glad to be finishing Canada, so now I can move on to my next country, which will be, well, area, which will be the UK. Now I've already had a premonition dream that supports what Zeta Talk has published for many years. So this event is pre-pole shift, and it's very important that the word gets out that this is going to happen. Of course, it's been published, but I would like to publish it in my, well, as part of my work. Is Zeta Talk is part of my my work. So I'm very much looking forward to doing that video on the UK. And so I want to thank you very much for watching, and you'll be seeing me in probably about 2 months with my next video. Thanks again.